Hey guys, welcome back to the Connolly Motor Group podcast. I'm your host, Dennis from Cronin, and today we have a very special episode of the podcast. I'm joined today by Group HR Manager for the Connolly Motor Group, Miriam Mitchell, to discuss all things HR and recruitment within the group. Miriam, you're very welcome to the Connolly Motor Group podcast.
Thanks so much, Dennis. Great to be here.
So Miriam, I suppose the Connolly Motor Group is one of the biggest motor groups in the country. We have over 270 plus staff, and we're always recruiting. We seem to be hiring to bait the band, which is great complaint to have. So today we're going to, I suppose, go through all the different bits, I suppose, for anyone out there who's either seeking a job with us or just in general. And I think this is going to be so valuable because as someone who was previously looking for a job before getting this one, it can be quite a struggle, and it can be very kind of daunting on someone. So I suppose, Miriam, first off, do you want to tell us about your role maybe within the group and what you do on a day-to-day basis here?
Absolutely. So I'm a group HR manager. So it means, I suppose, the role is so broad, Dennis. There's so much to it, but the recruitment part of it is really, really important. And what I would say is our people, our employees, our new candidates coming in, they're essential in order to be successful, for our group to be successful, and the success that it has had at the moment. That's as a result of our people. So there's so much elements to recruitment. There's compensation and benefits. There's the learning and development side. We have a training manager, Jackie Regan, who looks after that for us now. There's employment law is a big thing within HR. It's answering the questions, it's support, it's the training and development. There's so much elements to it that I really, really enjoy.
Brilliant. And you do a great job, Miriam. You were one of the reasons I got my job, so I think you're fantastic.
Great, thank you.
But I suppose, Miriam, we'll go from the start. I suppose the first step, obviously, is submitting a CV to a vacant position. I suppose, what would be some advice you'd have to someone when they are doing up their resume, maybe updating it there now, when they are looking for their next role?
Yeah, absolutely. I think when we look at CVs, I see a lot of CVs coming in, Dennis, and we have a lot of, I suppose, between our sales, our service, all our support functions, and what I see coming in, and one thing that can put us off when we see CVs is grammar. So if somebody is applying for a job, I would always say, imagine that you're in that job, visualize yourself in that job, and how do you get there is by showing that you are successful in terms of your background, whether it's your experience, your skills, it could be your qualifications. So look at your CV and go, this CV is my brand. So that's a really, really important. So what I would say is, looking back at how you structure it. So look at your more recent experience, so where you're working to date, and work backwards and put that, your most recent experience, at the beginning. And the same with your qualifications. Put your most recent qualifications at the beginning. So you're looking at your qualifications, you're looking at your experience, and then put down within the experience, then put down bullet points of what you've done. So we don't need to see, I suppose, essay styles in CV. Sometimes people have different styles in terms of their CV, but what I would say is put that into a cover letter. So rather than put it into a CV, put it into the cover letter, and then that showcases exactly who you are and why you want the job. And put that effort into it. So I would say spend a number of hours tailoring your CV to that role. And the font as well is another element of it, Dennis, is really important. So again, with some of the CVs we see, if they have font that we can't understand, that we can't read, we look at the CV and we'll go on to the next candidate. So Arial, Times New Roman, those kind of fonts are really, really good for the CVs. What I'd also say is, and again, this is preference, definitely, it's you don't see it that often, but people will put their photographs on their CV. So that's also good if people are interested in that. But what I would say is make sure that photo is a professional photo. So if it's a very casual photo, that can kind of send out a different message. So it's like, if you're putting the effort in, make sure that you look at all of these aspects of it. And what I would say is the email as well on the CV, that's professional, because again, if we're looking at CVs and we're looking to contact candidates, if a CV comes across as somewhat unprofessional, and it could be controversial, then that can give a sense of, the kind of character that we're recruiting. And we have to look at somebody that comes in that's professional, that brings positive behaviours, good credibility. All of those things are a big part of that.
Brilliant, brilliant. And I suppose that's definitely a crucial element of just even securing that next step, which is the interview. I suppose before we go on to that, Miriam, I suppose if you are applying for a specific role, should you be tailoring your CV to that specific role that you're applying? Because I even know from my own past, you have one CV and it's kind of one size fits all. If you're going for a specific role, should you slightly tailor that to meet that specific job that you are applying for within the group or whichever role you're going for?
I would say 100%, Dennis, because if somebody is applying for a job and they've got different skill sets, I think it's good to see diversity for sure. And it's not to leave something out of his CV, but what you could do is if somebody has a different background and they feel it's not relevant, then they can just put a little content on it, like a little, maybe 2 or 3 lines on what they were doing. So, it shows that they have some experience and that they were working or they were employed. And with that, I think it shows then that, that it's important, but maybe it's not particularly relevant. So, and I would say a CV doesn't need to be any longer than 3 pages. Again, like I've seen a lot of CVs, I suppose, over the years, and some of the CVs could be like 5, 6 pages, and that's not necessary. So going back to your question about tailoring it, it's looking at going, am I applying for a sales role? Am I applying for a technician role? Am I applying for, an apprentice role? Am I applying for a sales admin role? The BDC, the call center, whatever area the parts. It's looking at those and going, what is the relevance here? And there can be so much of those skills that are very transferable. So it's just, I think what it comes down to is taking that time to think about it, and don't rush it. So, again, I talk to a lot of applicants and they're like, well, I'm interested in a role, but I don't have a CV. Do I need my CV? And I'm like, well, absolutely. It shows that you're putting effort in, and it's really putting your energy into the role. And if you're putting effort in, then the chances are that you're going to probably get shortlisted based on putting the effort into it.
Brilliant, and I think that's so true, and it's some great advice there for anyone that is looking to enter into the workforce again after the madcap year we've had. I suppose, Miriam, as well, one thing I suppose for the Connolly Motor Group, and it's a question I had before when I sent in my CV day one, it's, do you need a motor industry experience when you are going into, we'd say, the group, or is it something in certain roles it's a necessity? Or what advice would you have to give to someone that is kind of thinking about applying?
Yeah, so good question, Dennis. When I look at the people that have applied over the last number of years to the group and that have joined the group, a large percentage of those don't have motor experience. So the ones, I suppose, the applicants or the employees that now have experience that have come from maybe the motor sector would be, say, service technician, because we're looking for qualified service technicians. I suppose the older term would have been the mechanics. And so for those, we would look for like the motor sector, or say apprentices coming in. They may have worked in, say, like garages or maybe summer jobs with maybe family. And so for them, I would say absolutely, it's definitely a benefit. And the same with sales roles. If somebody comes in and we're looking for somebody within the team where there's maybe a gap, we may need service a sales role within the motor sector. But there are 9 times out of 10, actually, I suppose when we look at this year, we're very open-minded with where our candidates are coming from. And I think we bring people from all different sectors into the group. And really what it comes down to is if they have the mindset and they're interested, it's even putting in a call to us and going, look, I'm interested in working in the motor sector. I've never worked there before. Is it worthwhile me applying? And the first thing I'll say, you've made the first step by actually calling us or by reaching out, sending an email into our careers@connolly's.ie inbox. And by doing that, that's showing that you're interested. So, we all have self-doubt when we're thinking of that job, no matter what that role is or how much experience. Do I have the skills? Do I have this? Will I be a fit? All of those kind of things. But they're good questions to ask. It's brilliant.
Brilliant. And I think that's definitely something, being as proactive as possible when you are trying to get a role like that. Like you said there, it just shows that, like, do you know what, this person, they really wanted a bit more. And it allows you to stand out a bit as well. And I suppose, Miriam, if you're after applying via the Connolly's email address, careers@connolly's.ie, you send in your CV, you get the call for an interview, whether it's on Zoom or whether it's in person, hopefully in the future. What should you wear to that interview? And I've heard stories such as, like, don't ever wear brown shoes to an interview and stuff like that. How true is that? And is there certain things, I suppose, that are almost red flags and what not to wear?
It's interesting to talk about the brand shoes. For us, we wouldn't. That wouldn't be something that we would think about. I think it's everybody has to bring their own character and personality in. I know some organisations do have that, and maybe that's their policy. But for in terms of a dress code, it's interesting. I was listening to a podcast yesterday, and they were talking about actually what you wear in the office and I suppose for me, when I think of a dress code, I think dress for success. And what I was saying I talked about at the beginning of this podcast is that people should come in with the mentality that they're going to be successful in this job. So visualize yourself in the role. So if it's a sales, service, IT, HR, marketing, whatever role parts, visualize yourself in that role and go, well, in order for me to get that role, what do I need to achieve? And that's by going into where, if it's a suit, if it's a sales role, it's professional. It shows effort, that you care about making the effort and that you're investing your time in to meet with the managers. And by doing that, it's really important to look at and actually looking at your color code. One of the podcasts is savvy.ie. They were talking about it to Carl Henry in the podcast, and they were really like big on dressing for success. And I think that's really, really important, looking at what color suits you, what you feel comfortable in. But it's really important to be professional and make an effort. So be it from an apprentice to service technician to service advisor to sales, whatever role it is important to make that effort for sure.
Brilliant, brilliant. And I suppose, Miriam, then I suppose moving on from that, I suppose you're well dressed. What are your kind of top interview tips? Because I think it's something that a lot of people dread, is interviews, and it's something that can really kind of put people under pressure, even if they are suitable for the role, if that makes sense, and they might struggle with it. What's your top tips for nailing the interview?
There's so many, I suppose, Dennis, that I could write a book about it, really, to be honest with you. If I was to look at the top tips, I would say, first of all, if somebody's coming in for an interview, obviously there's going to be nerves, generally speaking, 9 times out of 10. Look at what those nerves are telling you and preparing. And that's just showing that you really want it and that you care about doing the interview. So preparation is the key. I would say that 100% when it comes into an interview. So when I talk to candidates and people apply for roles and they're shortlisted into an interview stage or pre-screening, I will always say to them, prepare your CV, and that sounds so bizarre, but many people come in for interview and I ask them a question based on their CV and they look at me like with a blank face, and to the fact that they haven't prepared or they don't remember what they've put on the CV. So they may have done that CV 2 or 3 years ago and they haven't looked at it at all. So I would say take a look at your CV, know who you are, know what you want. That's really important, because interviews are a two-way process, Dennis. It's really about gone with the days when it was all about the employee having to, or the candidate having to impress the employer. It's two ways, that we are looking for the best person and we want to showcase who we are as an employer as well. So I would say preparation, taking a look at our social media sites. Again, I would always talk to candidates when they come in and say that take a look at our Instagram pages that have been done by our marketing team. There's so much good content there. So if you're looking for a salesperson, you could go on to our Instagram and our YouTube channels and our Connollys.ie page and take a look at who we are and what we are about. And that will it'll help make candidates more confident and comfortable knowing who we are. Then they know when they're coming in already, the nerves are going to become, I suppose, less magnified when they're prepared for it. At the end of an interview, like if, there's different questions that we may ask about, say, soft skills like your communication, how management style that you've worked well with, and then going on to the technical, like say like the Excel, the email, all that kind of side of things, and the sales process. But really asking questions about the company, about your role, about your team, because by asking those questions, it shows again that you care and that you're interested in it. And I'd also say, I don't think it might sound like a bizarre tip to say, but ask for the job. If you want that job based on what people there are talking to you about and you're like, I want this job, just say the job sounds really good, I'd really be interested in it. Because again, sometimes we meet candidates and we're not sure by the end of it if they really wanted the job. And again, that can come down to people, maybe for whatever reason, people have different reasons when they apply for an interview. But what I would say is, Dennis, for interviews, outside of, public speaking, spiders and death, interview process and the interview itself is one of the most feared elements for anybody coming in for a job. And I always think of that when I meet candidates coming in. And it's just so important. And actually, when they come in, this is a different kind of an unusual tip. But if somebody's coming in the day they come in for the interview, come in about 15 minutes early. So then you're prepared just in case something happens. Because if you're late, then it starts off. If somebody's late and the managers are waiting, then it can show, like, I suppose, that maybe the person isn't punctual, and they're going to be like that if they join the group. So those kind of concerns obviously are going to be. But if somebody's actually delayed for some reason because of traffic or whatever reason on the road, it's important to ring ahead as well. It doesn't happen very often, but it can happen to anybody. But it's those kind of things, just ringing, going, look, I got delayed here, but I will be there. Yeah, I just think it's really good to just a little bit of deep breath, and just enjoy the experience, I would say.
Absolutely. And I do think kind of, I suppose, punctuality is definitely a top tip. First impressions, particularly in a job interview scenario, is so crucial, because you're trying to sell yourself in some regard that you are suitable for this role. And Miriam, I suppose as well, specifically, I suppose, with the service technicians or even our apprenticeships,
yeah,
what type of qualifications should they have going in, or what type of background do they need to even apply for, we'd say, the apprenticeship specifically?
Yeah, absolutely, Dennis. It's a good question. So what I would say is, when I advertise the apprenticeships, and we have a number of them at the moment, and it's something that we're always looking for apprenticeships throughout the year, because we're based in Ballina, Sligo, Galway and Letterkenny. I would always put in a couple of links on our job ads, and there's a website for apprenticeships, apprenticeship.ie, and if they take a look at that, they will see what is required in terms of the 7 phases that's required for the apprenticeship. So in order to apply for the apprenticeship, they have to have their driving clean driver's license. That's really important, and as an apprenticeship they have to have a pass maths. They have to have completed their Leaving Cert in maths. So we would see quite often people applying that are in the middle of their Leaving Cert, which they're obviously, and even a number of months before it, which they're pre-planning for their career, which is great to see that. And what we will all say, those are the criteria that we need, and that's under SOLAS, which is the training body for the apprenticeships. With the service technicians, obviously they have to have that 4-year apprenticeship, which is a requirement. That apprenticeship is really, really good in the fact that they spend, a number of weeks with us as their employer, and then to spend, say, 20 weeks with SOLAS training, then to spend the next phase with ourselves, and then to spend 10 weeks with SOLAS training. So they're getting the best of both worlds. They're getting to go into college, train, learn and work with people at the same apprenticeships, and then come back and apply that into the learning environment. It's really, really good, and it's really good. And our apprenticeships are really, our apprentices and our service technicians, they're so passionate about what they do, especially what everything is coming down the line with electric cars and everything that's going on for 2021 and going forward. There's so much opportunities. And what I would say is, like, for our marketing qualifications, having that degree in marketing is really important, be it social media, the different elements, similar with HR, similar with IT, all our areas in finance, a lot of support functions there that we have across the group. It is good to have that educational background, but we would have a mixture of people. Some people that may not have their qualifications, but we invest a lot then in training with staff within various roles as well, Dennis. So once I think the people that come in here have a mindset. They want to work with us. They're interested in progressing. There's over 20% of our staff have been promoted over the last few years. There's a lot of successes. And we also have a number of people that have come back over the years as well to the group, the boomerang effect. So they leave the company, and within maybe a couple of months or a year or two, they come back to the company. So they might have went traveling and then decided maybe it wasn't for them, or they might go into another employer and realize actually, they've left and they actually want to come back. And that's something that we really like to see as well. So I think it's a good sign.
Absolutely. And I suppose, Miriam, one other, final question would be, your social media, and even, LinkedIn in terms of a professional social media. How important is that? I know when I applied for the job, my LinkedIn was looked at straight away. And I think it's a great way of enhancing your CV. From my point of view, and I think it's a great way of enhancing it. But I think as well, it can also be a bit... It can get some people out of a job if they have stuff on social media that they're not able to kind of, stand over, or that isn't as professional as perhaps their CV is. So
Yeah.
I suppose, what would be your advice that way? Is it to make sure everything's squeaky clean in terms of what you have on your social media and your LinkedIn?
Absolutely. So I suppose with LinkedIn, it would be we use LinkedIn for recruiting as well for certain roles like sales, service advisors, and our support function roles. And there's a lot of good content on it. It is a good way to network with people. It could be previous lecturers, it could be previous employers, managers that you've worked well with, and building those relationships. And people maybe that even that you haven't talked to in quite a while and actually reaching out again. So LinkedIn is really good for networking, but 100% I would say employers are looking at that more. So if there is an image, and even sometimes, it's something that they can look at, be it when they're an employer or when they're coming in, they may look at their Facebook profile. Obviously, that's always open for people to review and to see. So if there's something that they see or that's obviously in the domain and the public domain, and it comes across that could impact the reputation of the group, for sure we'd have to look at that, because we need to I suppose send out the message, and it's important that we hire really, really good people, and our people are aware that if there's an impact externally on a reputation of a group, it's about their own credibility as well, Dennis. I always say, your own brand is really important. Working with Connolly Motor Group is excellent. Looking at your own personal brand and what you're about as well sends out a message, and it's really, really important. And I would say to anybody, whether you're in school now at this moment in time, or you're looking at maybe changing career, it's important just to address all of those, and just think about it before you put in comments on social media. It's really, really important.
Absolutely. Well, that's some great advice, Miriam. And I suppose just to finish up, Miriam, I suppose if there is anyone out there who's after seeing a role that they like on the Connolly Motor Group socials, or whether on LinkedIn or wherever, even on the website, what's the best way to apply for a specific job? Is it just to go on the Connollys.ie onto our recruitment page and send in the form?
Yeah, so what I would say is, for the roles that we have at the moment, or when people see this podcast or listen to the podcast, do take a look at our Connollys.ie page, and you'll see the opportunities there. If there's something there that you have a skill set for and there isn't a vacancy there at the moment, obviously we're always thinking about the future, the strategic vision of our workforce. So I would say send in your CV to careers@connollys.ie, and there will be somebody there in the HR department that will review that and will make contact in some shape or form to advise us if there's any queries on it. I think, look, it's good to see people from like all over the world, or people are applying for our jobs. It's important that people have the eligibility, the criteria to apply for the jobs. We're very open to diversity. Inclusion is a big thing for Connolly Motor Group. We've over 14, 15 different nationalities in Connolly Motor Group, so we're really keen to grow that. And what I would also say is that we have had a big focus on females within the sales, within the motor sector, and we're trying to increase and drive that more, and they're very, very successful. If there's anybody out there that feels as a female that they're daunted by applying for an apprenticeship in the service side or within sales, in our sales executive roles, I would say send us a message to careers@connollys.ie, and we'll contact you and we'll have a good conversation. And that's really what it's about: engagement.
Absolutely. Well, obviously, from my point of view, having come through the recruitment process, etc., within the group, I think it's a great place to work, and I think you do make the process as easy as possible. And I think that's really important as well. That, like you said, you can see it as an interview in one sense, of course it is, but also it's a conversation between people, and there's I suppose an informality to that, because at the end of the day, it is just a conversation about you and what you can bring to the group.
Yeah.
So. Miriam, thanks so much for coming on. Pleasure chatting to you on the Connolly Motor Group podcast. If you have any questions for Miriam, guys, you've got her email there. It's careers@connollys.ie. And for more information, you can check out connollys.ie. So until next time, this has been the Connolly Motor Group podcast, and we'll see you soon.
Thanks, Dennis.
No worries. Thanks, Miriam.